The £1,000,000 days. We all dream of having them. It's what has brought so many of us to the trading arena. In reality, the big trading opportunities are only the tip of the iceberg. It's the 1%. Now, peak performance is all about the implementation of a consistent process, within that, a self-belief mindset, and eventually what comes is the opportunities. Now, without a consistent approach, if you do not have a consistent process, and if you do not have the right mindset, it doesn't matter how easy the opportunity scope is. You could have the easiest trade come across your screen. You will not be able to capitalize on it if you do not have a consistent process and the right mindset. Okay. Peak performance is built on the foundations of strong habits and disciplined actions. Ultimately, if you're cultivating the right mindset and the right belief systems within this framework, that is where you can capitalize on various opportunities. If you want to achieve peak performance, you've got to be ready, sufficiently ready. And that readiness comes through being consistently applying yourself and making sure you have the right mental mindset. That's what we're going to discuss today. We're going to talk about the formula for peak performance. Okay, and that's what this diagram represents. Now, the hardest part about peak performance, where most traders, 95% of traders fail, the hardest part is simply being consistent despite the trading performances. In other words, it's very difficult to be consistent and come in every day and work your ass off when you're not making any money. And that's why most traders fail. Let's discuss that. What you can see in front of you is that chart that's going to illustrate both progression and your equity curve. Now, if you take a look at the progression, the linear progression line in green, okay, we can only learn at a rate at which we experience the markets and apply ourselves. Okay, that's what progression is about. Now, what we're going to talk about in a couple of slides' time is ultimately how we can apply ourselves in a methodical way that we can steepen that progression curve. Okay, so that's what we've got in the yellow. We can have a slightly steeper progression curve. We can equally have a slightly flatter progression curve. And that comes down to the processes you adopt. If you adopt no processes, guess what? Your progression is going to be a hell of a lot slower and flatter than someone who does adopt processes. Okay, the trader that journals every single day for 45 minutes for 2-3 years, he's going to have a far steeper progression than what you are. But the reality is, it doesn't matter what your processes are. Progression is linear. You can only learn at the rate of, how you apply yourself. That is the reality. Okay, so what you can see here then is that over time, if you think of the x-axis here as your number of trading years, what you can see is that over time, we can have something like 100% improvement. I'm 100% better than I was a year ago, or I'm 200% better than I was, 2 years ago. We can have that sort of progression improvement. Unfortunately, and this is the key, unfortunately, progression does not lead to trading performance results. Okay, in other words, just because you work your ass off, just because you are improving and becoming better at how you make decisions because of your processes, does not imply you will make money. It's not a guarantor of making money. And this, unfortunately, is where all traders come unstuck. Why? Well, think about it. I go to work, I do a 9 to 5 job, I'm doing good at my job, my boss gives me money. That's how we've been taught to think about progression and earning money. We are rewarded ultimately for progressing at our job. Now all of a sudden you're thrown into this career of being a trader. You make no money for 2 years. You know you're progressing. You understand that you're doing better things. You're making less mistakes, but you're not making money. And in actual fact, all of you will lose money. Okay? Trying to compartmentalize that and come to terms with that is very, very difficult because it doesn't make sense. How can I lose money, but I'm better? That doesn't make any sense. But unfortunately, that is the price to pay for gaining experience. You have to pay for those experiences. Every day I sit in the market when I'm clicking and I'm got round trips going through and I'm losing money. Unfortunately, that is the experience I'm paying for. And that's what creates the equity dip. Okay. Now, unfortunately, where most traders come unstuck is that initial part. Most traders cannot firstly understand how they can lose money, get better, but make no money. So they look at it as, well, I'm improving, but I'm not making money. And I need to, of course, be objective about this. And my wife's kicking my ass, so I'm out of here. And they give up. Okay. Moreover, The next part of it is some people start to see the slow progression in the equity curve back towards that starting point, but it's too slow for them. And they look at it as, well, there's no real rate of change here, despite the fact that I'm a much better trader than I was when I began. And so more traders give up because they're not getting the rate of change that they expect or that they think they should be getting. Now, the truth of the matter is that it doesn't matter who you are, you're all going to see the same equity curve at the same time. In other words, progression is not directly correlated to your equity curve. Okay, at some point within your linear progression, you are going to get a parabolic equity curve. Okay, but there's no exact knowing of when that timing comes. You have to just trust that if you are better, if you are improving, if you're doing things in a better way, by definition, you're making better decisions. And at some point, that will translate into an exponential equity curve. Okay, that is something that's extremely, extremely difficult to swallow. It's very difficult to try and compartmentalize it because it doesn't make sense at an objective standpoint. How can I not make any money but be getting better? Okay, and that's why you often hear of high performers as being process oriented. They're not focused on the monetary side. They're focused on the today I experienced this. I didn't know that. I learned this. Next time I can do it better and I won't make that same mistake. High performers are always focused on process. Okay. Now, a way to look at this is, often, I hear traders think they have this mindset of, I work hard, so I should be paid. Well, the reality is that's what 9 to 5 jobs are for. If you want to work hard and get paid, go do a 9 to 5 job. Now, if you choose your favorite sport, and most of us like sports, choose your favorite sports. How many of the pros in that sport do you think made money in their first couple of years as a rookie? I guarantee you it's zero. I can absolutely guarantee you it's zero. And they are professionals at what they do. They've perhaps sacrificed 10 years even before they become a professional to be at that level. Yet they accept earning nothing and progress is the only option. Okay. Welcome to the game of high performance. This is what it looks like, not just if you're a trader, but if you're a professional sportsman, if you're a professional at anything, this is how it works. You give up the equity gains because they are what you pay for the linear progression. At some point, that linear progression translates into exponential equity curve. That is what you have to accept. If you can't accept it, save yourself some money. Walk away. Walk away from the frustration because the reality is you're going to give up at the absolute wrong time. Okay? Now that you understand, okay, that why so few can embrace this, all right? Why so few people actually ever survive this job. It's because of ultimately how linear progression and the equity curve just don't relate to one another. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about this linear progression. How can we steepen it? How can we flatten it? And it comes down to ultimately consistent process. Okay, process ultimately is the heart of everything. If I've been with Tradelo for a long enough time, you'll know that Tradelo is embedded within process, various different processes. Okay. What are processes? Well, we've got a number of them. We've got pre-market preparation. Okay, that's a process. Think about reading the news, how you chart, the kinds of analysis you do. Okay, think about trade journaling, right? How you do your trade reviews and how you capture the data. Think about automated risk management, right? Following a very consistent risk management approach. Think about performance reviews, right? Where you can find marginal gains, how you can be better, areas for improvement. Think about data analytics, right? How you look at charts, what types of charts you look at, what time frames you look on charts, and then setting of goals. Okay, all of these things form a unique process. Every one of these is an individual process, and all of this together is the trader's process. Okay, this is why, surprise, surprise, if you've been a Tradelo member, every one of these is embedded into the Tradelo application. It's because this is at the heart of being consistent. Right? Like I said to you in the beginning, I gave you that circle. I showed you that if you want to perform as a top trader, the first step is you've got to be able to apply yourself consistently, day in, day out. You've got to be able to come in and do the processes every single day, regardless of how your P&L is shaping up. This is step one. If you cannot commit to the step one, that's where you're going to fall on by the wayside. Because We cannot do this, ultimately, we'll never be fully prepared to take advantage of the opportunities. Okay. These processes, doing this every single day, this is what enables you into a state of readiness, right? They remove many of the uncertainties that ultimately we pick up as traders. But more importantly, they also give us a sense of security. They allow us to trust ourselves. They ultimately safeguard against critical errors. Okay. Now, important. The exact process you adopt is not as important as being consistent with the process. And this is key to stress. Okay. When I went to that chart, and I just want to go back to this briefly, I've got a pink line and a yellow line. Both of those types of traders have got a process, right? What I see far too often with traders is there's a fear that my process is wrong, or can you check my process? No, a process is something that works for you. And the important thing is to have a process. Okay, journaling is a process. How you do it ultimately must come from you. Of course, I can show you ways to do it better or worse, but at the end of the day, it's got to be something that enables you as a trader. Okay, now what I want to stress is that what matters here is not how many or which processes you adopt. Rather, what matters is you have got a process and you are consistent with it day in, day out. Okay, I see many traders, they've got a fantastic journaling process. It takes them an hour in a day, and then 2 weeks into it, they can't do it anymore. They can't commit to it because they've got life and they need to do shopping and they need to go home to the kids. The reality is that a process that you can commit to every day is far more powerful than a process you cannot adopt. Okay, and that's very, very important to stress. Now, why is consistency key? Okay. Why is it that we need to be consistent? What is it that, consistency does for us? I mentioned to you, sure, it enables us to trust ourselves. It enables us to remove certain uncertainties. It puts us in a state of readiness. This is what consistency does for us. Okay. But more importantly, it reduces volatility. Okay, when you've got a consistent process, we're coming in every day doing the same thing day in, day out, which means when those unheard of or unlikely events occur, we're not panicked into them. We're not suddenly in a state of panic and making bad decisions. Okay. When we are consistent with our processes, it reduces ultimately the volatility that we'll encounter. Okay. It improves our decision-making quality for obvious reasons. We're making less bad decisions, making more good decisions. We're making more effective decisions. It gives us a measurement and feedback loop. Okay. So when your process is consistent, you're measuring your performance more effectively. And therefore you can understand what works, what doesn't work, do I need to adjust. It instills discipline. We come in every day. We know what we're supposed to do. First thing I do in the morning, put my lines on my chart. Next thing I do, go and update my trade journals. Next thing I do, execute trades. Next thing I do my daily debrief. It puts in place for us a structure that we can follow. And when we have structure, we can be disciplined. Okay, we're just simply following a recipe for success. It also ultimately ensures that we don't stray too far from what we want to be doing. And then, like I said, it instills security and trust. And this is crucially important. Ask any top performing trader how they perform when they lose their process or they stop doing the things that enable them. They will tell you, I feel like I'm lacking something. Something's missing. I'm afraid. What they're actually telling you is that they don't have that sense of security that normally comes from being consistent with the processes we adopt. Okay. The more processes you adopt over time, like I said, what you'll learn to do or what you'll learn to come to understand is that your process is integral to performing optimally. That is why we have to be consistent with the process. Now, it is critical to stress at this point that it doesn't matter how strong-willed you are. Okay, you can be the most strongly willed, strong-minded human being on the planet Earth. If you cannot consistently apply yourself, I don't care how strong-minded you are, you will fail as a trader. That is a guarantee. Okay, because at the end of the day, having a strong mindset is not sufficient to succeed as a trader. You've got to consistently apply yourself. And the same goes without saying, you can be the most consistent trader in the world, absolutely have the best process in the world. But if your mindset's wrong, guess what? You're going to fail as well. You have to have the right mindset. Now, a few weeks ago, and this is a fantastic story because it prompted a little bit of thinking from my side from a psychology perspective. So a few weeks ago, a young trader reached out and they said to me, look, do I think they could be a good trader and make money? And they went through what their processes are, what their strategies are, and la 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 la. And I listened, and my instinctive response was, yeah, look, I think you're on the right track. I think, you're working very hard. I think you've got a good work ethic. You sound like, you're doing all the right things. So yeah, I think you can make as a trader. And that was my instinctive response. And then I thought about it for a day or two or three, and then it just dawned upon me, and I was reflecting, and I thought to myself, actually, absolutely no. I don't think you can make it as a trader because If you have to ask someone whether or not you think they can, or whether or not they think you will become a good trader or you can be successful as a trader, you're missing quite possibly the most important ingredient to any high performance pursuit, which is self-belief. Okay. Nobody, absolutely nobody should be telling you yes or no, you can or can't make it as a trader. That's got to come from you. Okay, and that was a very key reflection because when I've always thought about, sort of high performance and achieving as a trade, I've always thought of from the standpoint of characteristics. Have they got the right work ethic? Have they got the right approach to how they think about things? Can they, handle pressurized situations? And those are important, of course. And I always believe that those characteristics are sufficient. But now I actually think those are necessary, of course, but so too is self-belief. You've got to believe in yourself, regardless of whether or not you're good or not. That's irrelevant. Self-belief is one of those key characteristics I think every trader must possess. Now, just to go on a step further, I thought about it further when I was reflecting. I thought, I can never remember a single point in my career where I thought the need or I felt the need to ask someone whether or not I could be a trader. In fact, I think I was the opposite. I think after jumping into London, I thought, well, I'd be making money in 6 months. At no point in my career did I think I would not be able to be a trader. I just thought, well, if the guy next to me can do it, if he can print $1,000 a day, well, why can't I? He's no different to me. He's just like me. So very, very important to stress. I've never met a single trader in my life that didn't showcase some form of self-belief. Okay. Now, this is where I want to kind of touch on this idea of some form of self-belief. Okay. And that's why I've got the scale here. And it's a very interesting visual because self-belief isn't you either have or you don't. There's varying degrees of it. And it's important to stress it like this because some people have got what we call irrational belief, and I'll discuss this in a moment, and it's a crazy kind of belief. And some people completely lack belief. Okay, the guy that said to me, "Do I think he can be a trader?" Yeah, I think he lacks belief. Okay, I think he's pretty much failed at the onset of this. Whereas you get a lot of traders that are in between, where they believe in themselves, but they also have limitations. They believe only so much is possible. They're comfortable with, making £2,000 a day, and then that they believe is good enough. Okay. So they have self-belief, but with limitations attached. Now, performance is ultimately directly correlated to your level of self-belief. Okay, it's important I stress that. Your performance, how big you can get, is directly correlated to your level of self-belief. On the right side, the more irrational your belief system is, the crazier performance you'll be able to have. And the opposite is true. Okay, the more you're lacking in belief, the less likely you are going to be ever to perform. Okay, now, like I said, I've met traders on both sides of the spectrum. Some traders who don't believe themselves, and I've met traders that think they'll be the next Paul Tudor Jones. Okay? The reality is that they are irrational. There is such a thing as irrational self-belief and rational self-belief. Now, the difference. Irrational self-belief is where people's belief systems operate outside of the bounds of what's rationally normal. Okay? In other words, we all accept that $500 is a lot of money. Someone with an irrational belief thinks $1,000,000 is not a lot of money. Okay? It's a different way of thinking about what the consensus general view is. Okay. Whereas rational self-belief is, yeah, I can do this. I'm good enough, but I don't think I'll ever be the best. Okay. So that's someone that has self-belief, but a different degree. It's not quite an irrational self-belief. Now, the example I like to think of when you think of irrational and irrational or rational and irrational belief is think of the 100-meter sprints. Okay, every year, every 4 years, we have the Olympics, and we have hundreds of people that now come to the Olympics to compete in the 100 meters, both male and female. And I guarantee you, every single one of them stands on that start line, even if it's the final or the semi-final or, the qualifying races. Every one of them stands there with the belief that they will be the fastest person in the world. Now, the irrational mind, and this is where it gets crazy, even though the male athlete who's never run under 10 seconds, even though he's never objectively ever showcased that he could hypothetically be the fastest, he still stands on that line and believes that he can run sub 10 and win the race and become the fastest man in the world. And that for me is what irrational self-belief is all about. It's that belief beyond what is objective. It's that ability to look at something from the standpoint of, even though I've never run under 10 seconds, I still think I'm going to be the fastest in the world. And even everyone on the outside says, you're ridiculous, you're a complete moron, you will never run under 10 seconds, you just simply do not have the height, stamina, strength, speed, blah, 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 age. That's what irrational self-belief is all about, okay? And this is something that's very, very important to understand because champions, the real champions, the best in the world, they are irrational self-believers. They do not believe what most of us, including myself, believe is normal. Okay, I'm a rational self-believer. I believe in myself, of course, but to a degree. So I impose some limits on myself. Okay, now the people that refuse to accept these external evidence or these objective facts, ultimately we call them irrational, self-belief people. Okay. Now, very, very important. Why does self-belief matter so much? Well, belief shapes our actions. If you truly believe in an outcome, ultimately you're going to align all your thinking towards it. Okay, you're going to align all your actions towards it. All your decision making is going to be towards making that belief become real. And over time, all that focused energy, all those little decisions, all those, things you do around that objective is ultimately going to lead you to achieving that insurmountable obstacle. Okay, in other words, believing about something creates an action to go and achieve that something. All right, and that's why belief matters so much. And I never want this to come across as something that's hocus pocus. It isn't. Okay, simply believing something to be true, it enables you to go out and actually make it become true. And that's why belief is so important. If you at the onset think, I cannot go and do this, you will never take that first action that's required. Okay. Now, it's not to say you won't fail. Of course, you're going to fail. Belief is not sufficient to mean you'll succeed. But belief is that precursor. It's that first step towards you moving towards something you want to achieve. Okay. We also then have the result of cognitive dissonance. In other words, when you believe in something, and this is a crazy thought, think about it this way. When you believe in something and you believe it to be, you believe in so much despite all the contradictory evidence, everyone says it's not possible. It creates a cognitive dissonance. In other words, I think I can do it, and I'm going to prove to you I can do it. Okay? The dissonance ultimately, where everyone says, no, you can't, you say, no, I can, creates an even stronger cognitive dissonance where you believe your own bullshit. And that is extremely powerful when you believe in your own bullshit and no one else does. That ultimately fuels creativity. Why? Well, because he's saying, I can't do it. Guess what? Let me show you I can do it. Okay? Oh, I've got this problem. Oh, I'm going to show you how I can solve it. Oh, I'm struggling now. Well, don't worry. I'm going to keep going until I figure it out because I have just put everything on the line. I've just said I can do it. Okay, so cognitive dissonance is the byproduct of believing in something. It creates this almost this bullshit feeling in your head where you believe something to be true, even though at an objective standpoint, everything suggests it's not. Okay. We then have an alternative reality. Okay, and this is very crucial to understand because when you believe in something, when you believe it to be true, when you think about it enough, your brain doesn't know the difference between reality and an experience. It doesn't. When you start to think about it something enough times, it almost feels as though it becomes less fearful. Okay, and I've been through this exercise recently, and I have a plan to do the English Channel swim, in 2026. And part of that, I have to go and learn to swim in sub 16-degree temperature. Okay, and everything about that initially scared me. But now that I've steadily started to swim in colder and colder conditions, what's ultimately happening is I almost see myself being capable of swimming in sub 16 degrees for 12 hours. Okay, and I feel that a lot more when I think about the swim, when I think about how I'm going to do it, how the day might go. I'm not afraid of it. Okay, so I'm living a reality that won't exist for another 18 months. But living that reality, my brain won't know the difference. Okay, you'll be surprised when you can vividly work yourself through certain situations that are not even true. Your brain starts to not be capable of realizing what is true and what isn't. Okay, and again, psychology is one of those things. At a surface level, we'll look at it sometimes and say, oh, that's a little bit hocus pocus. But go play around with it for yourself and you'll see how it translates. Okay, if you strongly believe something is possible, your brain will create the pathways that align to be making it true. Okay. And another way to look at it, whenever I think I have a big trade I want to execute, what I really like to do is go and live that trade out. Okay, I like to feel it. I like to put myself in that position, see the position moving on the ladder, see myself going on side, see myself going off side, see myself having that big winner where I run it to target. Because doing that, living that experience before it ever becomes true, normalizes the experience for me. Okay, it means that by the time the experience comes, I'm not responding to the market. If I go onside, my heart rate's not going up. If I go offside, my heart rate's not going up. Why? Because I've lived that experience before. The brain doesn't know the difference between reality and something we've dreamt up. Okay, so very, very important. Self-belief is crucial for us. Now, the million-dollar question, can self-belief be harnessed? Okay. Previously, I said to you, I had that guy come to me and say, look, can I be a successful trader? And absolutely no, I don't think he can be, but I absolutely think that self-belief can be harnessed. Okay. Now again, to explain this to you, I'm going to use a personal experience. When I was young, I grew up with four older brothers, and everything was a competition. As you can imagine, I was the baby of the family, and I always wanted to be better than my brothers. Okay, I always had a point to prove. They were all older than me. There's a pretty big gap between me and the oldest brother, so I had to prove a point. I wanted to prove a point. Okay, I was the small one, and I wanted to stand out. So I grew up as a swimmer. I had dreams of going to the Olympics. Very much when I was 3, 4 years old, I started swimming. When I was 7, I wanted to go to the Olympics. It was what I was going to do. Now, to prove a point to my older brothers, they all entered into the swim. It was a race, and they entered into the 1.5 kilometers. Now, it was an open race. What open means is that anyone can enter into it. Okay, so you had some 14, 15-year-olds, but mostly you had 18, 19-year-olds. Okay, that was the average age of the participant in the race. And I said, I want to swim in it. And people looked at me like, you're crazy, you're 7 old, shut up and sit down. I said, no, I want to swim in the race. Okay, now there was no restriction on an age, and so I had to be entered. Now, as a 7-year-old, you can imagine everyone's looking around going, is he crazy? It's just a waste of time. He's probably going to stop after 500 meters because it's too far. It's just not something a 7-year-old should be doing. I never thought that. I just thought, well, hang on a sec. I'm going to beat my brothers. I want to go and prove a point that I'm faster than them. Okay. It was a naive, it was an irrational self-belief that I can be better than someone that's more than double my age. Now, ultimately, that belief system has followed me through my entire life. I've never approached something with a, oh, can it be done? I've approached it with a, well, if he can do it, so can I. Okay. And that's where ultimately self-belief is self-taught. Okay. It comes from experiences. Now, sure, my self-belief came from, swimming a crazy event where I effectively came stone last. But guess what? I set a record that stood for 10 years. No one ever touched my record. Why? Because no one was stupid enough at the age of 7 to go and do it until someone was. Now, there are many 7-year-olds that'll compete in the 1.5K swim. Why? Because it's been normalized. All right. The point is that you can teach yourself self-belief, and it typically comes from a number of things. Number one, you first have to begin by adopting a growth mindset. Okay, you've got to start viewing failure as a learning opportunity rather than a sign of impossibility. Okay, if you're afraid of failure, guess what? You're never going to learn self-belief. Okay. Two, learn to jump in the deep end. And this is something I encourage people to do all the time, particularly now that we are coming to the end of the year. Something I always encourage people to do the first day of the year, do something stupid. Sign up to something crazy, something that you never ever thought possible, you never thought you were capable of doing, but someone else has done it. Sign up and go and do it. Commit to it. You achieve that, you'll realize you're far more capable. When you realize you're far more capable, that creates self-belief, the belief in oneself. Okay. Number three, visualization. Okay. Immerse yourself in experiences. Right? Don't be afraid to step into some form of a reality and put yourself there. That'll teach you to realize that anything is possible. If someone else can do it, so can you. You just need to experience it firsthand for yourself. Okay. Seek micro wins. This is very, very important. Find small wins. Okay. Make sure that on path towards achieving anything, make sure you get those little wins. Why? Because they reinforce and they create self-belief. Oh, look, I've progressed. I never thought I could progress like this. Oh, I'm getting better. I'm improving. It's possible. Surround yourself with believers. Okay, this is something I cannot stress enough. The reason some prop firms do so well and why they have traders that can put 1,000 lots into the market is because they've got a bunch of crazy self-believers in the office. People that don't have limitations, people that are a little bit irrational when it comes to thinking about things. Okay, surround yourself with people that believe. Don't surround yourself with people that think it's not possible to make $100 a day trading the markets. Those are the kind of people you want to leave by the wayside. And then finally, practice mental toughness. Okay, very, very important. Put yourself in uncomfortable positions where you're going to fail. Don't always put yourself in situations where you're going to fail, because when you get good at failing, You get good at discomfort. That forces you to grow. When you grow, guess what? You develop self-belief as the byproduct. Okay. If you experience this enough, if you do this enough times, you put yourself in enough difficult positions, byproduct is self-belief. Okay, self-belief is nothing more than a learned skill and it comes from your life experiences. So it can be taught, it can be learned. Now, let's talk a little bit about pressure because I think pressure is something that's very, very important. And there's a little thing I want to share with a lot of you that you're possibly experiencing now. And I want to tell you, don't worry about it because pressure is very positive. Okay. Pressure is a powerful force in high performance. Yes, it's a stressor and it creates a lot of anxiety. I get that, but it's a catalyst for growth. It forces you to focus. Ultimately, it gets you to achieve the things you want to achieve. Okay. Now, what I want to do is I want to explore the role of pressure in high performance. Okay. Why it's essential, why we need to, have it and how we can harness it ultimately to get to where we want to get to. Now, most of you, ultimately, there's a situation that you will never overcome, which is what I'm going to explain now. Okay. And it's got to do with this diagram here. You come into the professional trading as a new trader. You've sacrificed a 9 to 5 job, or perhaps you're young and you're now coming into trading wanting to earn an income. You got bills to pay, you got rent to pay, you got to put food on your table. Now, unfortunately, that creates a degree of pressure because you have to perform. At the end of every month, money goes out, you need money to come in. And that's a pressure, it doesn't matter who you are. Every single trader will go through. At least all traders that come from a normal background, from not a high resource background, will have to deal with this pressure. Can you make enough money to pay the bills? It's always going to be top of the mind as a new trader. Okay. If you want to make a career as a trader, unfortunately, you're going to have to first learn to make enough money or a salaried role. Now, most of you, unfortunately, will be overwhelmed by this pressure and you will fail as a result of this pressure because you will not be able to ultimately survive for long enough or get beyond this pressure point. Now, worrying about making a wage is something you do early on in your career. Absolutely everyone I know struggled with this pressure early on. But at some point, here's the reality. The pressure will switch from can I make a wage to can I trade bigger position sizes? Can I make £1 million day? Okay, pressure will always be there. It's never going to change. It's just the type of pressure changes. At the end of the day, you will overcome this pressure of making a wage. Guaranteed you will overcome it. If you trust in process and consistently applying yourself, you'll progress. And if you trust that progression eventually leads to that equity curve steepening and that exponential move, the reality is the result is the pressure of having to make a salaried wage disappears completely. I have not worried about making a wage since 2013. Okay. And it's not that I didn't have that stress. Of course I did. Absolutely I did. For 18 months, I worried about it. I stressed about it. I went to bed crying about it, thinking, is this the right job for me? Who does a job where you make no money? I had all that same self-doubt. Okay. But the reality is that you do overcome this pressure. More importantly, and this is what I want to stress, pressure is very important in shaping us and enabling us to achieve the goals we want to achieve. Okay. Why? Pressure creates focus. If we didn't have pressure, ultimately we'd be distracted. I know so many traders, including myself, that have suffered years of bad performance because of a lack of pressure. Why? Well, I'm making money. I can make my couple of, grand, I can make my wage and my account grows slowly. But when there's no pressure on the line, guess what? There's a lack of focus. There's a lack of, this is what I need to be working towards. So pressure ultimately heightens our focus. It raises the stakes. And when the stakes are raised, when your wife says, make a salary, I'm going to kick your ass, that creates a sense of urgency. And that's what motivates us. And that's what forces us to prioritize things. And when we prioritize, when we focus the mind, guess what? That's when we start to perform. Okay. Pressure builds resilience. When you're constantly exposed to pressure, ultimately you can handle challenging situations much better. You're far more composed. We need pressure to perform optimally. Pressure triggers growth. Like I said, when you're out of your comfort zone often, when you're under pressure, it forces you to do things differently. This develops new skills, unlocks new creative ways of doing things, helps you to adapt to different challenges. And ultimately, it eventually leads to breakthroughs. Okay, you wouldn't have had that $10,000 day if you couldn't first start making $1,000 a day. The $10,000 a day is a direct result of you being under pressure to perform. Okay, and it's those breakthroughs that come from having pressurized situations. And then finally, pressure defines the big moments. Okay, those career defining moments, like I started off by saying, that £1,000,000 day is the 0.0000001% of the instances. Okay, but it's under a high pressurized situation, or it's the years of pressure that you've worked under that ultimately lead to that career defining day. Okay, the first 10K day, the first 100 lot trade, all of those pressurized situations, they unlock new big moments in our career. We need pressure. Okay, there was a famous quote by Billie Jean King, famous tennis player, who said, "Pressure is a privilege." Now, sure, you're struggling to make wage this month. I get how you're saying that sucks. It feels so hard that I can't make a wage this month as a trader. I get that. But flip your mindset around to think that pressure is a privilege that will enable you at some point to progress as a trader, to become a high performance trader. Embrace the pressure. Okay, see it as pivotal in reaching your full potential. Don't forget, if it was easy, it wouldn't be worth it. Okay, let's wrap it all up. Let's talk about how this all comes together with our diagram. We said at the beginning that you have to be consistent. You want to be a high performance anything, then you have to start with consistent application of process. Step number one, it's fundamental. Second, we said you've got to have self-belief. And there were varying degrees of self-belief. Okay, and we said that you can be, of course, irrational self-belief or you can be a rational self-believer, but you have to have self-belief and it can be learned. And we then spoke about the importance of pressure and how it shapes ultimately what we become. Finally, it's opportunity. Okay. When you read about that £1,000,000 day, you're just reading about the opportunity, the once in a million chance. The reality is that if we're not consistent, if we don't have the right mindset, if we're not under pressure, if we're not building ourselves, we'll never be able to capitalize towards that opportunity. Okay. And that's why consistency plus belief or mindset, that is the catalyst for big opportunity. Being consistent ensures that when the opportunity arises, you're not scrambling to prepare. The groundwork's laid, you can capitalize. Having the belief, the right belief system, it removes those limitations. Okay, if I don't think that 10,000 days is possible, when that big opportunity comes, it's not possible to have £1,000,000 day. But if I have no limitations and I've been preparing my mental state for that day that eventually I have that 1,000 lot on and I run that trade all the way to target, if I've done the years of practice, that purposeful practice, there is no limitation. There's nothing that stops me from achieving what I want to achieve. Okay. And then finally, it's the alignment with luck and timing. Okay. Consistency keeps you in the game long enough for luck to intersect with your preparation. That's how it works. You will all be lucky a few times in your career. But if you're
Well,
not sufficiently prepared and you do not have the right
not
amount
good.
of practice and preparation and structure and belief, you simply will not be able to capitalize on that big moment. All you have to do once you've got the consistent process, once you've got the right mindset, the only thing left to do is patiently wait for those moments because you've prepared for them. Okay. Big moments aren't accidents. They aren't. I know sometimes when we see it on social media land and we read about it, we think, oh, he's lucky or oh, he got lucky. The reality is it's not. It's years of grinding out. It's years of, relentless consistency and unshakable, sort of mindset. If you do the work daily and you cultivate the right mindset and you believe in the extraordinary, you're a little bit irrational in your mindset, you will place yourself in a position to take advantage of very, very rare opportunities. And the best part, and this is the key to all of it, once you've had a taste of this rare moment, it's very addictive. Okay, once you've capitalized on an opportunity, it's extremely addictive and you want more. And guess what happens? You believe you can have more because you've got that self-belief. So what's going to happen? Well, naturally, you're going to achieve more.